but maybe verging on literary. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm bringing you a reading vlog, a weekend reading vlog. So I'm heading away for the weekend. It's going to be a cross between a girls' weekend and a read and relaxing weekend. I am going to a comedy show with friends, but that requires me to travel out of town. Then I also get a day and a bit to myself. So I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to do a bit of a reading vlog. So I am going to be using reading prompts to help me select my reads over the weekend. I am using the Wheel Decide wheel. I'll have that link down below, a link to that website. And I have put 50 random prompts in to make this interesting. I'm going to move myself over to the side and you will see over here my current wheel. Instead of coming up with words, it is just random lines. So we are not going to know what each prompt is until we actually pull it, receive it. So we're going to start. I have my laptop over here that has my prompts on the screen. You'll be seeing what's happening just here, but let's pull my first prompt. Okay. Self-help or personal development. Okay. All right. I'm thinking non-fiction. Let me have a look and I'll be right back. For my first prompt, I got self-help or personal development. For that, I'm going to read How to Keep House While Drowning by K.C. Davis. It says on the cover, it's a gentle approach to house cleaning and organizing, and is a book for anyone who feels overwhelmed by life and is looking for an accessible and gentle way to care for their home and themselves. So I have borrowed this through the Libby app, through Overdrive from my library. Sorry if you can hear my computer screaming up a storm in the background, but I'm going to be listening to this via audiobook. It is only a 3-hour audiobook, which means I should actually get through it potentially in my first leg of my trip. So I might actually take the plunge right now and pull another book. Okay, let me pull another prompt and I'll select a secondary book to make sure I get through my full first leg of my trip without running out of something to read. All right, I'm going to once again move myself over. You'll see the wheel of prompts over here, and let's pull my first prompt. Let's pull my next prompt. Second chance romance. Okay, let me have a look and I will be back. I am back, and that took me a minute to find a second chance novel that was available to be borrowed as of now on Libby, which is through my library. But I managed to find one. I'm going to be reading One Last Summer by Kate Spencer. This book is about main character Claire Millens, who has got her dream job, but it's a nightmare, has recently had a bad breakup, and she's just discovered that the owners of her summer vacation location that she goes to every year with her friends, which is her childhood summer camp, they are retiring. And the revelation results in a night of reminiscing and an unexpected heart-to-heart with childhood camp nemesis, Mac. I'm getting the impression that the relationship portion obviously is going to be through Clara and Mac, and it is tagged on Goodreads as a second chance. This is definitely outside of what I would normally read, which is really the point of using prompts to guide your reading choices. But that is enough rambling from me. You can follow along as I read, and we'll be starting with my first book. So I'm partway through the first leg of my trip, and I've just finished reading How to Keep House While You're Drowning by Casey Davis. So this was an audiobook. As an audiobook was only about 3 hours, and the book itself is written for neurodivergent people. So it's done in a way that you can read it as a whole, or you can read an abridged version that kind of cuts out some of the, I wouldn't necessarily say unnecessary detail, but some of the detail that just expands on ideas. So it cuts out some of that, so you could get through the book rather quickly, even more so than the 3 hours that the actual audiobook is in its full version. If you follow me on Goodreads, link down in the description, you will know that I have read a lot of organization and decluttering books. That is my version, I guess, of self-help, self-development that I tend to lean towards, as organization, clutter, cleaning is probably one of my downfalls. And I find some of the books really good, and some of them, they just don't fit me, my personality, my needs. This one specifically had some really good ideas and concepts, and I guess habits / tricks of the trade that I think would benefit me, while there were some other things that I don't really think is for me. That doesn't mean it's not for other people, and it doesn't mean that it is not a good, helpful concept, just that it's not something that I personally want to bring into my life. Can you hear that wind? It is really windy outside. But to get back into my mini review here on the book, I really liked the main premise of the book was about the fact that tidying, organizing, housekeeping, or care tasks, as Casey refers to them as, care tasks have no morality to them. They are morally neutral. So whether you get your care tasks done or not, that does not mean you are a good or a bad person. And I know it maybe sounds strange to say it like that. Truth is that some people, myself included, do think things like, oh, I failed, I wasn't able to get that done, I didn't complete all the tasks on my cleaning task list, so I failed. So Casey does talk a lot about the idea of if something's worth doing, it's worth half doing. I guess to wrap this up, if you're like me and you struggle partly with decluttering, organization, cleaning, what I would have considered motivation to do a task, but Casey refers to as task initiation, which are two different things, which was definitely something I learnt while listening. then this could potentially be the book for you. Like I said, it is only a 3-hour audiobook, which I would think means that the actual physical book is not that long either. And it is also further broken down into the way that you can have the abridged version, which does cut out some of the chapters that have additional details. So I am going to start my next book, which is One Last Summer, I think is what it is. I'll have a picture up here anyway. I'm going to get started on this one for my last little leg of this trip here, and I'll continue it tomorrow when I start leg 2. So I'm partway through my second leg of my trip, and I've just stopped for a little bit of lunch, and I'm 20% into One Last Summer. So we're following main character Clara, who is a bit of a workaholic, lives in Boston, hasn't attended the annual trip with her summer camp friends for quite a while. I think it's about 5 years. She's then forced to take a playcation from her work because she is on the verge of burnout, which is perfect timing for this year's annual trip. So currently 20% in, she's just arrived at camp. She's starting to meet up with her friends, and she's learning that life definitely moved on while she was head down, bum up in work. So Clara is around the same age as me. She's 35. I'm currently 36, and she's a millennial. So I've got the impression that Clara and I are of very similar age, and I think as much as contemporary romance is not always my favorite, I think the backstory, the back plot of this in relation to Clara and overworking and the stress of life is maybe a bit poignant in many's lives, especially when you're hitting the back end of your 30s. We did meet Clara's executive assistant, her intern. Her name is Lydia, and Lydia is a Gen Zer, and I love Lydia. She is so funny and so honest while still being kind to Clara, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing more from her, though we are now moving into this part of the story where she is rekindling friendships and obviously the foreshadowing romance at summer camp. So Lydia is back in Boston, so I'm not sure if we're going to have more of her as the book goes on. So far I'm enjoying it, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where this story goes. I'm currently 71% through One Last Summer, and the main couple of the story, which is Mac and Clara. They're in the process, I guess, of officially getting together. But we're still got what I'm going to class as the third act breakup or the third act conflict to happen. So I'm unsure how that is going to play out. As you're aware, this is a second chance novel, and I think that second chance isn't just focused on the relationship, but on Clara and her life. So she's very career focused, had a pretty nasty breakup that left her unsure of where to focus, what makes her happy. So she put all her energy into her career. And that breakup is obviously not the only thing that started her on that path, because we're made aware that she hasn't attended these summer get-togethers, friendcations, I guess. She hasn't been attending those in approximately 5 years, and the breakup was only a year before this story takes place. So it is not because of the breakup, and I wouldn't say either that it is because of the relationship, the prior relationship, that Clara is the way she is. I would like to note we haven't heard too much about this prior relationship with Charles except early on with the book, but I do appreciate the fact that it is not described or detailed as Charles being a bad person in any way. Sometimes you get these big breakups that are meant to hurt in the books, and it is because the other person is not particularly a good person, like they're cheating, or they turn out to be quite toxic, the relationship was toxic, all those kind of things. In this one, it is more so they, which happens very early in the book, so this is not a spoiler, they break up because Charles breaks up with her because he is not happy and also believes that she is not happy. They are more in this relationship because they believe they should be, rather than they're in it because of passion, love, etc. So I did appreciate the fact that it is probably more realistic. It is not in a scenario, not saying that, toxic and cheating is not very realistic, but it was nice to see a more amicable or a breakup that was done where both people were not presented in a way that they were bad people. And Charles even says it is not her, she is great, he loves her, he just doesn't think that they're right together. So I did appreciate that. I think my relationship with Clara overall has had its ups and downs, but I think it makes sense for the character. There's certain behaviors and things that I think sound selfish or unaware of oneself, but I think that's definitely how the character's meant to be. Clara is very much a character who has put all her focus into one thing. She is a to-do list person, after my own heart, but likes to be in control, which also is like me. So maybe my ups and downs, my feelings towards Clara is maybe because they hit sometimes too close to home. Like I said, I think we are about to hit the main conflict of the story outside of the, I guess, self-growth and second chance romance, but we're about to hit the main conflict arc. And I'm hoping for a good resolution, but I'm also wondering, though it is a romance, so you're aware that a romance equals that they end up happy in the end, they're together and they're happy, ends with a happy ending. I'm wondering if that happy ending is also going to conclude the resolution for this conflict, or whether that isn't going to turn out that way. Especially because I think you can have a happy ending without everything equaling being happy and going the way that you want it to, which I think from my current experience with the book, and including relationships with other characters, I'm picking up a tension with another couple in the book, and I'm a bit surprised that Clara hasn't picked that up, and the other characters maybe have but aren't talking about it, which is interesting. But I think this book is more of a contemporary romance, and it focuses on that midlife, not midlife crisis, but that midlife slump, and then that midlife revigoration, I guess. So I'm interested to see if everything ends up in a nice little happy bow, or whether we are going to have still conflicts, still, I guess, disappointment in other spaces. So far, I am enjoying it. I am listening to it via audiobook, and I actually, for the first time, have upped the speed of my audiobook to 1.25. And that hasn't been an issue with me doing that. I'm still following along with it quite nicely, but I am getting through it quicker. So this is my first time of upping the speed on an audiobook. I used to do it all the time when I was listening to textbooks for class. But yes, this is my first time doing it with an actual audiobook. But I have decided, because I'm about to head out and get some brunch, which means I'm going to go to a cafe, and I can't particularly be sitting in said cafe listening to an audiobook. Well, I probably could, but I enjoy hearing the hustle and bustle of a cafe while I read an actual book. And because I've only got about 2 hours worth of my current audiobook, I've decided I'm going to spin my next spin. So let me kind of move you. How's the best way? Let's do this. And I'll move myself over here somewhere, so you've got me on the side of the screen so you can see my spin. Let me pull it up. I'm still using that We'll Decide app online. I'm doing this here on my laptop, which is why I'm looking down. So let's go. The next prompt is, I've just done second chance romance, so I don't want to do that again. I will roll one more time. A main character over the age of 40. Okay, all right. That is different. The book I was thinking of reading, the main character's only just turned 21, so that is not going to work. So I'm going to go have a look, and I'll be back in a sec. Okay, I am back. And I did find a few potential choices for a book with a main character over the age of 40. So the first one was The Cactus, which I'll put a picture up here, but I actually don't have that one here where I'm located, so I can't do that one. The next one I looked at was The Woman's Club by Margaret Bard, a sizzling novel of sex, secrets, and ambitions. It follows 3 women, Miriam, Susie, and Sarah, who are all part of a women's club. They all seem to be quite successful women, potentially because of the women's club that they're a part of. They all seem to be, well, at least the main 2 are definitely, I know at least 2 of the characters are definitely over the age of 40. The story seems to follow these 3 characters and some mystery, heartbreak, love, all of the above. I'm definitely interested in reading it. However, as you can see, it's quite thick. It's just over 500 pages. So I don't think that this is the right book to try to read today. so we won't be reading that. I then moved over to looking onto my Kindle instead, as I was having trouble with the books I own. And the first one I found was Tempted by a Mountain Man, which is an age gap romance that is quite short. It says it's hot, steaming novella, should only take me about an hour to read. Like I said, it does say age gap. However, I couldn't find any clear indication of how large that age gap is and whether that main character is, the male main character is over the age of 40. I can assume that they are either in their late 30s, early 40s, but I didn't think it was suitable to read that book just based on the assumption. So I kept looking, and what I will be reading is Where There's a Will by Anna Sparrows. This is an romance focusing on the two main male characters, one named Connor, who's in his 30s, whose life gets tipped upside down, and the other one is Will, who is a single father and firefighter who steps in to help Connor out. I didn't really read too much into the blurb, but there is a note that says, though majority of the book is teeth-rottingly sweet, there are some triggers in here, which seems to include traumatic grief, homophobia, and the struggles, anxieties, fears associated with parenthood. This one is only about 300 Kindle pages, so I think that will be perfect for my relaxing trip to a cafe. And yeah, let's go. Let's get into it. So I've just finished reading One Last Summer by Kate Spencer, and I actually gave it 4 stars. That is completely on feels, on vibes alone. But as I said previously, contemporary romances aren't normally my cup of tea. Not something that I tend to get really invested in. They're good, I can enjoy them, but I don't really get invested in what's going to happen. And I'm surprised I actually ended up invested in these characters. I'm actually starting to wonder whether me saying contemporary romance isn't my thing is maybe not 100% correct, because I do like sports romance, and I have read other romances and enjoyed them, but I've always been a bit more of a fantasy, paranormal, para-romance, fantasy romance, romantasy type person. So I didn't really think contemporary romance was what I was into. However, I found myself really invested in Kate Spencer's characters, the story arc, and the outcome. Like with all romances, it does have a sappy, happy ending, but that is the expectation of the stories. That's really why you read a romance. You know that everybody is going to end up with their happily ever after in whatever that means for them. I did really enjoy Kate's writing style and the way she developed the characters. I also really liked the arc of the story, though I will say that the third act conflict did not really have the oomph that I was hoping for. It was a different type of oomph. And I guess that made sense because you needed to be able to come back from that scenario. You needed to have the redemption arc necessary to get through the story. I've personally never been to a summer sleepover camp type thing. I've been to school camps, which I think have a very similar atmosphere, but I've never been to these ones that you go to during the summer school holidays. So from that aspect, I had an understanding of what the characters were referring to, because like I said, I've been to school camps, but I've never had that outdoor adventure type camp, though my sister does actually now work for a similar camp in the UK. So I found it really interesting to read about it, especially from the perspective of somebody who is now in their mid to late 30s and is viewing everything with a real nostalgic rose-colored glasses look. Like I said, overall I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I'm definitely interested in reading further works by Kate Spencer, though I am wondering if right now the 4 stars is just because I felt rather invested and maybe I've overstarred it. Maybe it's really a 3-star book. I would probably say it's a 3.5, but I only do 3s and 4s because that's what Goodreads does. So in that case, I'm giving it a 4-star. I am still reading that Kindle book Where There's a Will, which also the fact that so far I'm enjoying that makes me think maybe my thoughts regarding contemporary romance are not correct, but that will get further discussion later. I'm only about 10% in, but at the moment I'm just having a bit of a relax and playing some Switch, playing some Mario Party. So I figured I'm going to roll again for another audiobook. So I've got my computer down here. So let's give this another roll. A cover that made you pick it up. No blurb, just vibes. Okay, I think that one will be pretty easy considering I'm doing it for an audiobook. I actually have an audiobook already borrowed out in my Libby app that I picked up because of the cover. I might select that one. However, I have read the blurb since picking it for the cover. I might go with that one, or I might just pick another one. Let's have a look. I'll have a look and I'll be right back. So I've selected my next read. I was originally going to select A Little Bit Country by Brian E. Kennedy, something like that, because I already have that borrowed out in my Libby app. I was caught by the cover originally. However, I've since read the blurb, which is what made me actually borrow it out completely. So I've decided to just go off vibes alone. I essentially went into the Libby app, selected the available now audiobook, and between 3 and 5 hours, because I'm not looking to read anything too long, and I just scrolled down until I found a book I liked. I ended up selecting this one here, which is Every Heart a Doorway by Sean Maguire. I haven't read the blurb. I have no idea what it's about, but that door in the forest just caught me. That is definitely my vibe. That is definitely my jam. So fingers crossed it's going to be a good read. So I'm about to start my fourth and final leg of this trip. I'm about 16% through my audiobook, which is Every Heart a Doorway, which is the first book in the Wayward Children series. I think last update little section I said it was by Sean McGuire, but it's actually Seanan McGuire. I'll have it written somewhere here on the screen because I'm pretty sure I have butchered that name. But like I said, I'm 16% into it. It is set in a boarding school. I think we are following Nancy at this point. Like I said, I'm only 16% in, but I think Nancy is going to be one of the main characters that we're following. And so far, the impression I'm getting, like I said, I didn't read the blurb, is that the children, the wayward children, have somehow fallen through doorways into other universes, other dimensions, other realms, which tend to move into either a logical realm or an illogical realm. Nancy seems to have fallen into a underworld type realm and is currently wanting to go back. She's been sent to this school by her parents in the hope that that will fix her, but she is currently thinking that she'll just open the correct doorway and fall back into the world she was in. Her bunkmate, her roommate, has said that that is not going to happen and that she won't be able to get back. So we've met that character, and we've also met a male character who's, I can't remember either of their names at this point, who is going to, I think, swap out the beautiful coloured clothing that Nancy's parents packed for her into clothing that Nancy prefers. So I'm wondering if those three characters are going to be one of the main character friendships in the book. We've also met Ellie, who seems to be the headmistress or the person who operates this school. And so far I'm picking up that Ellie was also a wayward child. So far, I'm not sure how I'm feeling about it. The premise is interesting, but the writing style so far is feeling, it's very whimsical, but maybe too literary. I'm not sure yet on my feelings, but like I said, I'm only 16% through, but there is about 4 hours left on this book, which I know I'll get through by the end of my trip. In relation to my physical book, which is a Kindle read, I'm still reading Where There's a Will. I'm 30% into that one. And even though my trip will be finished, I will do check-ins until I've finished that book, and we'll finish up with that book. So far, we have had the first catalyst, the big crisis in the book, one of the things that is noted in the trigger warnings, and it was quite hard to read. I can definitely understand the grief that our main character Connor is going through, and with the writing style and the way we've been introduced to the characters, I definitely feel that I am experiencing to a certain extent that grief with him. I don't think I was connected enough with the character to be full on crying, but I definitely teared up, and this was a tear-jerking moment. I know in one of my past little segments I was talking about, I think it was in the last book I read, One Last Summer, I was talking about how it was good that the boyfriend, the ex-boyfriend Charles, wasn't created to be a bad guy. He was just somebody living his life, trying to find what makes him happy in his life. In this scenario, I will say that that Connor's boyfriend, Anthony, he is set up as a very toxic character and you are wanting him out of the picture. I am not sure particularly how I feel about that setup. I think it's designed in a way so then when Will does things that are just nice, that they come across nicer because Connor has had this experience with Anthony. I can understand that if you have made a life choice for yourself that you are going to be child free by choice and that situation changes, that maybe you are not willing to stick around for that outcome. And I think that it could have been good for this story, this relationship to be played out in a way that a choice was made without it being so toxic and horrible. I think that outside of the lack of wanting children, Anthony is a disgusting character that you would like to see the back of. But I wonder if it could have been done in a way that instead of, I guess, villainizing this disinterest in having children, this lack of wanting children, and making the whole character be toxic and yucky, could have it been done in a way that, look, my choice is still that I don't wish to have children, so I'm sorry, but we can't continue. Could have it been done in a way where Anthony had boundaries but wasn't a jerk? Especially because sometimes with these toxic relationships, these toxic people that they have in these stories to then make you want them gone and for you to then further support the hero, the main love interest that the story is going to end with, they make them so toxic. But I also feel like when you consider that toxicity at times, especially in this case, is probably verging on a form of abuse, especially in this case more the emotional abuse. But when the characters are like that, and then all of a sudden they're just jumping into a happy relationship, which is great and you want that. But I also feel like they don't address, the leftover trauma that comes with having gotten out of a toxic relationship. I think that can make that main character that we're following seem less realistic, because there would be certain situations where I think their traumatic past, their past experiences would colour that situation, and I don't think that's ever addressed. I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't think a toxic relationship or a verging on abusive relationship should just be used as a plot point to move on to that next thing. Obviously, having the boyfriend meant that Connor and Will couldn't hook up when they first met, where if he didn't have the boyfriend, maybe they would have jumped straight into a relationship. So then they make the boyfriend so ugly, I guess, in a way that you want him gone and you want the character to hook up with the alternative option. I feel like I'm rambling and ranting a little bit about this fact, but I think it is a heavily used plot point in stories. And in this case, specifically with this storyline, I think I would have liked it better instead of him being toxic, if and abusive, emotionally abusive. I think I would have preferred it if he just had a boundary on his life or something that he wasn't willing to take that next step into, and then they split because of that barrier. Right? And that was a natural split. Like, look, I can see your life is going in a different direction than I'm willing to take, and thank you, but no. I think more honest communication would have done a lot better for that story than the nastiness that we had. Because I mean, like, I don't see how that relationship flourished with the characters that we have and the way that they are in that scenario if he was that disgusting. But like I said, I'm only 30% through, and I will continue giving you updates on this book outside of my trip when I manage to finish it. So I'm hoping I'll probably give you one or two more updates on this story. So far, I'm enjoying it. I like the two main characters, Will and Connor. This is the first book in a series, and I have a feeling that the other two seem to follow either Will's two children, Jack and Wes, or potentially we're going to follow something to do with Connor's best friend. But I'm imagining it's going to be more along the lines of Will and his two sons. At my current point, I do think I'm liking all the main characters and would definitely continue with the series, but I will let you know if anything changes as we go along. So I've just pulled over for a puppy pee break, and we are 60%, sorry if you can hear him heavy breathing, but we're 60% through Every Heart a Doorway, and at first I wasn't sure if I was going to like it. It has this whimsical style of writing that I was hesitant about at first. I thought it was going to be too literary, I guess, for my interests, but I think the drama of it has caught me. So definitely the mystery of what's happening, the drama associated with it, that's got me caught. So I'm definitely going to be continuing with it for the rest of my drive. I've got about 2 hours left, so I might not finish it before I get home, but we'll see. So I'll let you know if I liked how it ended. I've just finished Every Heart a Doorway by Shauna Maguire. This book was selected for the prompt, just the cover. So based on the cover vibes only, not to read the blurb, those type of things. So I selected it based just on the cover, and I didn't even read the blurb before I started it. I didn't want to then read the blurb and kind of ruin the cover vibes only concept. So when I first started listening to it via audiobook, as I said earlier, you start by following a girl, Nancy, who has been sent to a boarding school, and you find out it's because she's previously fallen into another dimension, another realm, another world. She's come back and really wants to return to her home, her other dimension. The writing style is very whimsical and probably really lyrical. It flows really nicely, but at first I was unsure if I was going to be able to keep a hold of what was going, if I was going to like reading that style, and I didn't really know where the story was going to go. I wasn't expecting a murder mystery type book, but that is really where you go. So you end up following 4 main students, one of them being Nancy, another being Cade, Christopher, and Jack. So you end up following this 4 group of students that are kind of dealing with this situation of these bodies that keep appearing. So it starts off with a character that I thought was going to become pinnacle to the story, which I guess they are, just not in the way I expected, being killed. And then the bodies just keep coming. So you're following these 4 students and their experience together. Well, your main character is Nancy, probably followed then by Cade and the Addams twins. So you're following them on this journey of both trying to deal with their survival, deal with their emotions of being in this world, while also this question of who is doing the killings and are they safe. Like I said, it's only quite a short audiobook, so it didn't take us too long to get there. And to be honest, after the second death, I did have my suspicions, which did turn out to be correct, on who the killer was. Overall, I really enjoyed reading it, and I was really pleasantly surprised by that. I would give it 4 stars, and if this is a book in a series, I would continue with the series. But after the ending, I'm interested if it's going to be a series that follows the current characters or if it follows different characters. I'm really close to the end of my trip, so I'm going to leave that at that, and I will continue giving updates on the physical book, even though I am nearly home from my trip. A couple weeks since my last update. Obviously, this vlog was originally meant to finish up with the end of the weekend. However, I hadn't finished my last book, which I am slowly trudging through where there's a will. I'm 64% into it. So far, the main couple have had their first get-together, and then we had a time jump of about 6 months. I'm unsure where that is going to work into the story at this point, but so far I am enjoying it. The relationship feels both rushed into seriousness because of the baby aspect, and Connor looking for something serious, as well as nice and slow to ensure that the characters are actually feeling it, which is a very interesting juxtaposition, I think, between it feeling both super rushed and super insta-lovey, while also feeling well-paced for the needs of both characters. I did feel that the age gap was going to mean something a bit more when it come to the sons. So far, we haven't really had too much concern regarding the age gap. That seems to be an issue more so that's playing out in the internal monologue of the characters, rather than any real negativity from other external characters. We have had it be mentioned by the external characters, as well as Will taking on a newborn baby, but there hasn't been too much angst, I guess, in relation to the age gap. I'm interested to see if we are going to have a third act breakup, or how that conflict is going to erupt and play out. But I will let you know when I have finished. So it has been like 2 months since I filmed my last segment. So just a reminder, and this is probably more for me than it is for you, as it was only like a few seconds ago, but back in July I had a trip away and I was doing a bit of a readathon while I was adventuring. And we finished the trip with a portion of Where There's a Will remaining. I can't really remember the last time I did a little fill-in about what was happening and my thoughts and feelings, but overall, this is a age gap romance. You kind of start the story off following Connor. It is set in Australia. Connor is Australian. It's set in the Gold Coast, and Connor is an events organizer. He has a small business that hosts and runs events. He starts off with a terrible boyfriend, and then his upstairs neighbor, whose name is Will, is a firefighter from America. He is a bit older and does have grown children, 2 boys to be exact. Connor's younger sister Daisy gets pregnant. However, spoiler, though it is kind of highlighted in the blurb, there is a terrible accident and Connor ends up with Daisy's child and having to raise it. While this is happening, him and Will really deepen their relationship. They kind of start off as friends, but when all the events go down with Daisy and Bubs, Will really steps in to help Connor out. If we're going to say the book is separated into 4 parts, the first part is Connor and Daisy kind of meeting Will, Daisy growing her little baby, and us learning about the current relationship that Connor is in, and I guess how toxic, how not suited that is. The second part is really Connor stepping into that fatherly position in Bub's life, and the beginning development of the relationship with Will, them kind of getting together and starting to build themselves a family. The third part, which I haven't really spoken about yet, is definitely a spoiler. So if you don't want to be spoiled, please skip forward. But Bubs, whose name is Vicky, her bio dad shows up in the picture and makes a claim. There is also a touch of homophobia, but it is kind of indicated in a couple small segments and it doesn't really flow into any larger conflict. The conflict definitely kind of focuses on Brandon, I think his name is, wanting to be part of Vicky's life and how that affects Connor and Will, both individually and as a couple. The fourth and final part is probably when everything really falls into place and we get our real good news story. We get the happy ending. I would say that even with the conflicts, the relationship itself is very smooth sailing, happy, low conflict. Obviously, I can't say there's no conflict in the book because we have the conflict associated with the accident and Daisy's death. Then we have the conflict of Brandon showing up and wanting to be part of Vicky's life, actually going for custody, as well as the touch of homophobia we get there, plus the overarching conflict associated with the large-ish age gap. And we do get a slight touch of conflict to do with Jack. So Jack is one of Will's sons. He has 2 sons, they're twins. I think it's Jack and Wes. Jack is the one that is more heavily in the book. And the second book in the series is actually about Jack. But in this book, we do get a slight touch of conflict and coming to terms with the idea that Will is in a relationship with someone who is not that much older than his grown children. And he is now raising a small baby with them. it kind of hints at a bit of jealousy and maybe slightly resent, but it is kind of touched on once. Then I think it is going to be reignited at the end of the book, but there seems to be, I guess, a cliffhanger for going into the next book that is about Jack. Like I mentioned, there really isn't much conflict between Will and Con. Their relationship is quite smooth sailing considering everything that is happening. Their communication is really good, and their understanding and grace for each other during hard times is also very good. In fact, I would say that Connor has more of an argument, more of a conflict with his best friend Henry. And they actually argue multiple times within the book. And even at one point, Connor stops speaking to Henry for a period of time. It is all really quickly resolved. And that kind of is how all of the conflict feels within this book. I didn't get that emotional roller coaster that you normally get with those type of conflicts. Like, they are really heavy conflicts. Family, grief and death, and also, someone showing up wanting to take custody of your children. That are really heavy topics. But I kind of feel, even when Connor is absolutely devastated, that because there is no conflict internally within the relationship, the romance of the story is kind of even keel, very easy to deal with, to the point that it doesn't even feel like this relationship is new, that they're both learning each other, learning their likes, learning their wants, also learning how to navigate a baby. It really, everything just kind of falls into place and works out well. In relation to the couple, though, I will say, apart from obviously the main fact that Daisy does pass away and she obviously does not come back, but all the other conflicts also really work themselves out in the wash, to a point that I, in fact, knew that is how it would eventually go. So nothing really felt too high stakes for me. I did enjoy the Australian element of the book, though I probably would have liked a little bit more Aussie in it. I think, having mainly read, I guess, Americanized stories, this book could have easily been transported and set within California. It wouldn't have really made much of a difference. Obviously, there was some language differences that were noted heavily at the start of the book, but then as we've kind of moved on, it's like the Australian element has been kind of forgotten. That probably does make it more accessible for people who are not located within Australia. It's got that real generic feel to a beachside coastal city. But I think because it was quite highlighted early on that it was Australian and that Will was American, I would have liked probably a little more culture shock maybe. Though, in saying that, Will had been living in Australia for a very long time. I do wonder then if we needed him to be American. Would have it been just as well done if he was Australian, in the same way that Connor was? Because there was no conflict in that cultural differences kind of way, which I think could have been developed a little bit more, considering how much they highlighted the difference, him being American and Connor being Australian. I ended up giving the book 3 stars, though I was a little on the fence. I think that if Goodreads did half stars or quarter stars, I would have given it probably a 3.5 to a 3.75. I did enjoy the writing style, And I did enjoy the character development, and I do want to continue with the series. It was a good book. It was well written. The characters were well developed, and you could easily see the differences between each character. I just feel that maybe the conflicts fell a little flat for me, and nothing really felt high stakes, even though the topics were high stake topics. I really had a lot of fun doing this vlog overall. It is a little bit sucky, I guess, that it took me so long to finish up the last book, but I definitely would like to complete more of these reading vlog style videos. Definitely let me know down in the comments if you enjoyed this structure, what you would like to see from reading vlogs in the future, or if there's any subjects, challenges, concepts that you would like me to use. But until next time, I'm Verity. This was I'm actually unsure what I'm calling this video at this point, so let's go with July adventure reading vlog. It is a reading vlog, and this is the end of the video. So now to the outro.